Welcome to the new Whiteboard Sports program called Scenario-Based Selections. Follow this series as I walk you through each pick of each round in the draft. Each video will begin with a group of players to be selected from, plus the roster of the team currently picking. We will start off this series with the first overall pick. Let's begin. Alright, so the first overall pick. So there's really two steps to picking a player, and the first one is looking at your team needs. So as you can see, we have no one on our team because it's the first round, so we can skip that step and say that every position is potential. We have these four, David Johnson, LeVeon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, and Antonio Brown as our top four. So what are some traits of a first round, second round, third round pick, an early round pick? I like my picks to be, real safe, as in they're going to perform as expected. Now, I'm not always trying to look for, who's got the best chance of being the number one overall player. I just want someone that is going to live up to its projections. And I think all four of these players really meet that expectation. So let's throw in some numbers. If you watched our series last year, you know that we like to insert in some numbers and logic rather than, straight opinions. So with that said, let's start out with three numbers for each player. The first number is going to be the average points per game of last year. All right. The second number that we're going to throw in is, you might have seen this, it's the similarity percentage. So if you did not see our series last year, the similarity percentage is basically the percentage of the total attempts of last year for a team that are still on the team this year. So it basically says how similar is your offense compared to last season. And our third number is going to be an improvement rate. The improvement rate kind of estimates the total attempts that a player could possibly earn more this season. So it really measures, how much more attempts a player can earn this year. And it's not really that important, I don't think, in the first few rounds. It really is for the later rounds, how well a player can improve from last season to this season. So, with that said, let's start with David Johnson. David Johnson's average of last season is 20.5. Similarity percentage is a 93. His improvement rate is a 36.3. Let's go to LeVeon Bell. LeVeon Bell's average is very close, 20.2. Similarity percentage is 88%. And his improvement rate is 77.9. So let's go to Zeke. Zeke's average of last year, again close, is a 19.6. Similarity percentage, the Cowboy similarity percentage is 96%. And his improvement rate is an 8.5. Let's go to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's average is a 13.4. Similarity percentage, the Steelers, so the same as Le'Veon Bell, 88%. And his improvement rate is a 21.7. Looking at these numbers, they're all really good numbers, especially the similarity percentages, and that's really good for a first overall pick. You really want your first overall pick to have a high similarity percentage because that means that he's going to live up to, his average of last year, or most likely. According to these averages, that would be a really good thing. So Le'Veon Bell has a really good improvement rate because he was suspended last year for the first 2 games, and he didn't get all those attempts. So the extra 78 attempts is going to be, mostly because of the missed 3 games. So let's now look at each player and use some logic to eliminate. Let's start with Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is a receiver. and he's also the only receiver on this list. And he was, usually the first overall pick last year, and that was really because, all the running backs were not really safe picks. If you remember Adrian Peterson, he didn't have a good year because of injury. Todd Gurley did not have a good year. David Johnson had a good year, but he was also, going into his second year. It was unpredictable. There was Ezekiel Elliott, who was a rookie, so that's automatically unpredictable. There weren't really good running back options, so Antonio Brown defaulted to the number 1 overall pick because he was the safest and best, option, along with Odell Beckham. As you can see, there are 3 running backs ahead of him, and they all are I think they're really safe picks. If you look at the similarity percentages, in accordance to the average of last season, those are really good numbers. So I'm not going to take Antonio Brown. I'm not going to take Antonio Brown for the first overall pick because I prefer, a running back, because there are less starting running backs than starting receivers, as in receivers tend to become more deep in the last, the next set of rounds. So I'm going to lay off of Antonio Brown because of that reason. Now let's look at Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott is a running back along with the other 3. We'll just put that in. So Zeke had a really good season. He's going to his second year with, last year a rookie quarterback too, Dak Prescott. He's going into his second year. They're going, they had a good season, made the playoffs, for the Cowboys. He's got really good numbers, and if you pick them first overall, that's not really a bad thing. So the reason I would lay off of Ezekiel Elliott is because he's only going to the second year along with his quarterback. They're young players. Defenses will have more to scout against them. It's just more unpredictable than David Johnson, who's going into his third year, and LeVeon Bell, who's even older than that. And, for that reason, I'm going to lay off of Ezekiel Elliott till later in the first round. So David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, those are really good, and they're really close. You really cannot go wrong with either of them. There are a few things I think will tell them apart. If this was a PPR league, which it's not, it's standard, I would definitely pick Le'Veon Bell because he gets more, targets, receptions. He'll have some games where he'll go for 10 receptions, and even though David Johnson is a good receiver as a running back, Bell gets more out of that. But this isn't PPR, this is standard. The reason, where I'm going to go with this, I'm going to talk about David Johnson. David Johnson had a really good year last year, but his team did not. The Cardinals highly underperformed, and they may want to make some changes on the offensive side, which may or may not result in him losing carries, to passing or, goal line stuff, whatever. And, for that reason, I'm going to take Le'Veon Bell just because of that little thing. But really, if you pick David Johnson with the first overall pick, you're still going to win. He should have a good season, based on these numbers. Based on his skill, based on his projections. So I'm going to take Le'Veon Bell because I just think he's more safe than everyone else. And Le'Veon Bell is a really good option for the first pick.